All right, guys, we're back. It's part two, episode number 11B or 12, whatever you want to call it. We're going to just jump right into another episode because our Barkley Marathons episode was jam-packed with information. We're just going to jump right back into it. We don't really have a warm-up lap. Part one was our warm-up lap. We're already into part two. We're already warmed up. We're loose. Ray's out of beer. I'm out of beer. Trey's out of beer.
We coordinated and wore the same outfits as we did last week.
Yeah. Well, strange.
It's crazy. So this episode is going to be all about just what we've been up to lately and also the 4x4x48 David Goggins challenge that I completed 2 weeks ago, I think it was now. So let's just jump right into it. The challenge, I don't know. I should have researched a little bit more of the backstory, but I know David Goggins created the challenge of essentially it's a span of 48 hours, and every 4 hours you run 4 miles. So midnight, 4 a.m., 8 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., 8 p.m., and so on for 48 hours. It's a total of 48 miles, essentially 1 mile per hour or 4 miles every 4 hours. I completed it with my buddy Cole Jensen, who we've had on the podcast. He's a former runner at Dickinson State University. Trey and I have both coached him as an athlete. He's an awesome dude, and he's always up for a challenge. So I shot him one text, and he said, "I'll be there. You tell me when. I'll be there." So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Where do you guys want to go from here with the episode?
So I was burning. I was just like, we are always like these questions I've just been thinking about for 2 weeks now that I've been waiting to ask you. And we've been on the phone 100 times since then. And it's been so annoying and so hard to avoid that stuff because just in casual conversation, we'll just sit there and shoot the shit. And I don't know if you do it now too, but anytime I'm on the phone with either of you, we'll start talking about stuff. And then about halfway through that conversation, I'm like, we should save this and probably talk about this on the podcast. So it makes the phone calls so much weirder now because I'm like, there's stuff that I want to ask and talk about. And I'm like, we'll save it. We'll save it. But
we're like keeping secrets from each other now.
well, it's big surprise, guys. Guess what? And it's like it's always funny to have that. But and just for me, the first thing I was like, I gotta ask him. I was like, I can't wait to ask. We are always on the subject of food, always. So, is there? I mean, maybe you felt all of those feelings, but kind of a slew of questions. Was there a point, distinctly a point, when you got done and it was like, if I see food, I am going to be sick, but I know I need to eat to be able to keep going in the challenge? Was there a time when you thought about food for the entire 4 miles and then went absolutely crazy when you got home on food? And what was the thing, the food or drink or gels or goos or whatever? What was the thing that you would say just absolutely anchored you, just got you through? It was your bread and butter and got you through.
Man, you just went so heavy into like the most interesting part of the whole challenge. It's literally the bread and butter. But I would say the most difficult part about the entire challenge was the eating and the scheduling, because after every single run, like 4 miles isn't that far. It's just not. It's not that far. It's pretty easy. We were knocking it out in about 32 to 34 minutes. So we had about 3.5 hours each between each rep. So, but you had to eat between every loop. You had no choice. And so I wouldn't say there really was food that I got sick of. I know that basically what we did to prepare was we packed for like a small track meet. Like Trey knows what that consists of, but Cheez-Its, bagels with cream cheese, granola bars, bananas, oranges, everything that you could think of that you would have at a track meet. Um, and I ate an entire family size box of Cheez-Its in the 48 hours, and I think that created the most intense heartburn that I've ever had. Uh, but it was just so delicious, and it's such easy little carbs to get in. But I think the funniest meal that I had was 4 a.m. on the second day. Um, so it was about 4:40 in the morning, dark as hell, and I was like, I have to eat. Like I can tell you get that feeling when your blood sugar starts to get a little low. You maybe get a little bit of the black spots around your eyes, and you're just kind of dragging. And I was like, it is 4:40 in the morning. I've been running on like very limited sleep, and I don't want to eat, but I know I have to. I sat in bed in my underwear and just slammed a Pop Tart at 4:40 in the morning, and I was just down in water and just slamming a Pop Tart in bed like a heathen, and that was probably the most unique thing that happened. And I was just like, it was that moment where I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I can't even like sit in the kitchen and eat like a normal human. I resulted to eating Pop Tarts and getting crumbs in my bed to just survive.
What kind of Pop Tart?
It was brown sugar cinnamon.
Oh,
That's good. I approve.
I think that's my number one flavor Pop Tart. Number two is either strawberry or cherry. That's my hot take.
all right. Well, at least we know we're not going to be stealing each other's Pop Tarts. We're completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Totally opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, so that felt like my low as a human being. Eating a Pop Tart at 4:40 in the morning in bed. Um, but then the next morning, I think it was the next morning, so we were over halfway. JC made us the most amazing breakfast of eggs and bacon and toast, and oh my goodness, having like an actual meal was just the absolute best. So that really got us going into the second day. That was really felt like our only actual meal the whole 48 hours. So that was that was a real big morale boost for us. Um, and yeah, I ate a lot of bagels and cream cheese. Cole just plowed through a whole loaf of bread. So we did, we did a lot of toast and butter and toast and peanut butter and different things like that. A lot of fruit, so a lot of oranges, bananas, anything light that we could get in because you really couldn't eat a whole meal because it just you would you would have enough time but not really. So we basically just snacked for 48 hours. Like it honestly felt like we were either thinking about eating, or had just got done eating and we're getting ready to run. So that was the weird thing with food is that was the focus the entire time because even while it felt like we were eating the whole time, there were still some loops where I was like, oh man, like my blood sugar is getting low. Like I can feel it. So it was that was an interesting part of that. So if you're gonna do the 4x4x48, be prepared to just eat for 2 days straight, pretty much.
Yeah. It's funny. One of the questions I wrote down was talk food to me. And so, I mean, you kind of like hit it. And then, I was, if it was random, if it was planned, blah, blah, blah. But that was literally the same mindset, I guess, as Trey. It's like, what are you going to eat? What were you eating? Like, but yeah, that's, props. I struggle with eating when it comes to running. So,
Yeah, that was definitely the most interesting part. Other things that I'm remembering that we had like those applesauce, the go-go squeeze things.
Mm.
Um, we did some of those quite frequently, and we did do some goos. We had some of the BPN Go gels, and then some of the actual goos. The consistency of the Go gels is more like applesauce, and they taste way better. whereas these are like peanut butter kind of gooey grossness. So we did do some gels, but we tried to stick to solid-ish food as much as possible. But yeah, if we needed some calories quick, I mean, we just whatever we could stomach at that point, really. Which, like I said, I don't think I got repulsed by anything too much. But if we would have kept going, I think I would have started to get a little bit more picky.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, did you do the same loop the entire time? Did you do like a 4 mile loop or out and back or whatever? Like what did you do?
That
That's a
that's
question.
a really good question. We did design a perfect 4 mile loop, and I would say we either did that forward or back the majority of the time. Um, that we actually preferred the backwards direction way better for some reason. So we did that one a couple extra, and then we did one out and back just to switch it up. I think it was like in the morning on the second day we just switched it up, and then the 2 afternoons we did stuff at the track just because the team was working out, so we were just kind of around that area. Um, but the majority of the time we did the same loop over and over. And I probably will not run that 4 mile loop ever again in my whole life. Um, because I was just sick of the exact same hill in the same place and having to cross the street in the same place and the same view. I got pretty sick of that. Um, and one of the weirdest things is afterwards, my body felt like it could only run 4 miles. Like
Mm,
for up until this last weekend, so 2 full weeks, my body like hit 4 miles and was like, why are you going further than this? You're supposed to stop at 4 miles. So like I had to really work to break that cycle of
mm.
only running 4 miles so that my body got stuck on 4 miles for like weeks after that, which was I was so sick of that distance. I never wanted to see 3.97 or 4.02 ever again. But yeah, pretty much the same loop, some variation of the same loop for 12 rounds. So I would say at least 8 out of the 12 were on the same exact route,
Okay.
Mm.
which kind of took some of the thinking out of it because those laps in the middle of the night when you couldn't
Mhm.
really think much. I don't think we would have been able to design a route at that time. So it was nice to be able to know exactly where to go and just we didn't have to think about it. That part was nice. Um, and not having that we didn't have to have any guesswork. It just we just knew exactly where to go. So that was nice. And the loops at night got a little weird, but yeah, we ran that same loop a bunch of times.
Yeah, that sounds tough. I think I would probably do the same thing though, where just a set loop or maybe two even just to switch it up. But uh, did you have any weird interactions? Did anyone see you like on the same route that or loop? Did someone see you multiple times, kind of being like, okay, what are these two doing? Because this is like the third time they passed by.
We did talk about that quite often and be like, what if we get stalked by the cops in at 4 a.m. or midnight or whatever? But the loops in the middle of the night, we really never saw anybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes because I think the first day we started was Friday, so at 4 a.m. we saw there was a decent amount of traffic just because it's oil field, everybody's up super early. But the second day on Saturday, we didn't see anybody on the midnight loop or the 4 a.m. loop. So we really didn't have any interactions with anybody. No druggies late at night or drunk people wandering home from the bar or anything. Pretty uneventful, really. One of the nice things was we had some of our just former teammates and friends kind of jump in periodically during different loops. And that was really nice just to get, different conversations going. We weren't talking about the same things over and over. It was kind of a morale boost. The second time we had ran the midnight 4 a.m. loops, Will jumped in with us and um, he was like, this was a terrible idea, but I'm glad I jumped in with you guys to experience what it was like run at midnight and then 4 a.m. So it was nice to have some teammates jump in here and there. We basically had the second day, almost every loop had somebody different running with us, which was pretty cool.
That's solid. I feel like that makes a big difference because uh, like you're saying, you kind of change up that conversation. But I think that's something that people don't think about either. When you have like a running partner or running group that you run with a lot, and you put in a lot of miles, or it's back to back to back like that, there comes a very distinct point when you're like, we've been running together for 5 years, or we've been running together every 4 hours for the last 40 hours. What else do we talk about? Like, what the hell else do we talk about? So um I would say my other, food was the big one. I feel like that was the important one. But my other question was, we just spent part one, we probably just spent about 30 minutes of that episode talking about mindset and build up and preparation. And when you do all that stuff, you have an idea in your mind built up of what it's going to be like. And so I was just curious to, once it was said and done and you take that last step and you're, walking in the front door of your house and you're like, I can't wait to take a nap and eat and whatever. Um, how different or similar, or how different or how close, to that feeling, were you? How the build up, the training and all that, and you kind of had an expectation for it. So was it way different than the expectation? Was it similar in a lot of ways? I mean, that was kind of one that has been a burning question too for me, because I feel like with something like that, you do so much prep that your brain has such a, you think you have such an idea of what it's going to be like.
Yeah, I think it was different. Um, it was different in a lot of ways. I going into it, um, I thought about the mileage, and I thought that 48 miles in 2 days, 24 miles a day is basically a marathon a day. Um, that to me seemed intimidating by itself. And I figured I would feel that in my legs a lot more than I did. So to sum that up, the running was actually the easiest part for me. Um, I wasn't that sore ever. If we weren't eating, we were warming up or cooling down or recovering all day. Um, and then during the night, we were basically running, eating, and then sleeping as much as possible. But during all the daytime loops, we were basically rolling out, recovering, getting our bodies ready. So I really wasn't that sore. I was a little sore throughout, but then by the time you get towards the back half, you can see the finish line, and
Mm-hmm.
so we felt really good. So I thought the running was going to be the hardest part, but the hardest part was the logistics, was the scheduling, the difficulty of trying to eat constantly, and just rearrange 2 whole days around that, where you really couldn't do anything in between, because your mind was focused on one thing and one thing only. So that some of the times I wasn't able to sleep just because your mind was racing. Like you had just got done running 5 minutes ago and you were trying to relax a little bit. Um, so for me, it was more the logistics side that was more difficult, which um, it showed me that ultra running, if you focus on the logistical aspects of it, the running part comes naturally. And it was interesting when Ray was talking about Jasmine Paris only running 60 to 90-minute runs every day. You There's a lot of different ways to train for these things, but the people that are executing the nutrition and the hydration and the rest and the recovery and the sleep, those are the people that are successful at ultra marathons. So it was kind of eye opening for me to know that my conditioning was at a good point, and that, logistically we were able to accomplish that. And what makes it so unique of a challenge is that unlike trail races where you have to pack all your stuff, you have to bring everything with you, stage it, whatever, have aid stations. We had a home base the entire time. We left and came back to my house for every loop. So we were able to not have to carry any food, not carry any water. Everything just stayed in one central location. And if things went just horribly wrong, at most we were 2 miles away from the house or however far from that loop. So that was reassuring, just knowing that, if something did go wrong, we were in town for one. We could carry our phones with us, which I don't know that I did every time, but we were just so close to our home base the entire time that it was just reassuring to know that, oh, we're 20 minutes away from being able to get some food in us or whatever. So that was a unique thing that is definitely different from trail runs and different things like that. But uh, yeah, it was definitely different in a lot of ways. That's for sure. And I'm still trying to rack my brain around processing it a little bit, but it was definitely different than I thought it was going to be.
I kind of figured there would be, after talking about the your first 2 3 questions there that you answered, it felt like all of your answers were so focused and directed towards all of the in between, that's why I was like that. That's why that question was on my mind for so long, because I was like, I wonder, when you put all that time and effort and thought into, this is what I need to be prepared for, and then it's always the stuff that you don't. It's the stuff that you don't think you need to be as prepared for that always seems to be the most important, and the most, like, really at the forefront of the whole thing. Because, like you said, it is, yeah, we run for 4 miles, but then we have 3.5 hours that we're in between, and it's like, if you there, you can either get better, get worse, or stay the same in that time. And anyone that's done any amount of running is like, well, I want to get better because I don't want to go struggle through. I mean, 4 miles isn't a lot, but I'll tell you what, like, when you take 2 steps out the door and your mind is wrong and your body hurts, and you're like, that 4 miles is going to probably feel like 8 miles. You know what I mean? Like 10 miles, 12 miles, like that stuff adds up pretty quick. So, um, yeah, it's really cool to see, the podcast and a lot of this stuff that we're talking about just kind of shift into a cooking show at this point, I guess, just a Food Network show. but no, it's just cool to see how uh I guess how all that morphs and how all that stuff comes to light the more you do it, and how important those things are that you don't even think about, never even come to your mind. So it's, yeah, I think, I'm super stoked for you. I'm super, proud of you guys for getting through that, and I'm super jacked that it was a success. But I'm also definitely enjoying, getting to kind of reap the benefits of us getting to ask all the fun questions, and not be up at 4 in the morning and worrying about that too much. So
I was very
Yeah.
tempted to text you a bunch after the 4 a.m. loops, but
I figured you would. I was waiting for him. I was waiting for a wake up call, but
well, we kept saying, we kept joking and be like, well, what's everybody else doing right now? They're sleeping and slacking off. We're out running, we're trying to really embody the David Goggins, like, get your ass out of bed, go carry the boats or whatever. So we were laughing, and we were up all hours of the night, it felt like, and where most people were enjoying their sleep and recovering. We were out suffering in the dark, which kind of relates. I'm not at all going to compare it to the Barkley marathons, but it's just a taste of, you know, it's crazy to think of, while we're sleeping or while we're even doing this podcast, like the amount of effort people are putting into their training and different things like that right now. And so
Mhm.
it's cool, just cool to think about that. And it was cool for us to do that. And I will say, I'll never underestimate daylight ever again, because when we woke up right before, we usually woke up a half hour before um, each run, and when we woke up at 7:30 and it was light out, it was like the most uplifting experience I've ever had. After running two in a row in the dark, and then on the second day we ran three in a row in the dark because 8 p.m. was already dark. So 8
Mhm.
p.m. midnight, 4 a.m. on the second day was dark. We daylight on that second day was the best thing ever, and we split our fastest time. We clipped along at an 8 or 7:50 at 8 a.m. on leg 9 of 12 because it was so nice out. Um, so daylight was refreshing. Not that the dark was that intimidating or daunting or anything like that. It's just it's midnight, it's 4 a.m. half awake, you're like, what the hell are we doing? You know, your legs kind of take a little bit longer to wake up a little bit. So, um, yeah, the night loops were just a little bit slower just for that. They weren't crazy intimidating because we were in town. You know, we it never got like pitch dark. It got dark on some stretch, but we had some street lights and house lights and things like that. So it wasn't ever super dark, which I think made a difference. Whereas if we were on trail or something and it was just pitch dark, that would have been a lot different. But again, we knew we were only a couple miles from home, which made it better. But the daylight was amazing. I'll just say that. That's one of my biggest takeaways from that. So if I'm when I'm running the 100 this summer, I'm sure when I see the sunrise, that's going to be pretty dang awesome.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm saying, like running in the dark or just being on a trail in the dark, it's like when your mind starts kind of playing with you, even if like whatever type of situation you're in, it's just, I think it's just kind of natural to be, even if you're just out for like oddly doing like a midnight hike or something, if that's your thing, but your mind goes places. So that's, a smart way for doing something like that in the town, I guess I would say, just to kind of have a little bit more of this, like a secure way of like, yeah, I can get through this. But it's almost like next step is you have to do a 4 mile loop now, like on the trail the entire time, just to get used to going out in the, you know, running in the dark.
Yeah, that'll be the next step, and that's going to be part of my training is to get a good 20 or 30 miler in the dark, in true darkness on a trail. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to experimenting with because I'm sure that'll be pretty interesting. But I wanted to show you guys our chart that we had. Um, that's how we kept track of our loops. And so again, we tried to take as much thinking out of it as possible. So then we just come by and put an X by each loop. We saw how many miles we were at. We saw what time it was. We had each key, like we tried to do 100 calories before each run, caffeine when we really needed it, water and electrolytes, and then after, take in calories, water and electrolytes, rest, recover, and sleep. So we just left us some notes, but it was definitely pretty dang awesome when we crossed that last section off. So that'll be a good little keepsake. I should have had Cole sign it, but yeah, that was our chart. And on the back, I wrote our step count. Um, do you have a guess of how many steps it took us to run 48 miles?
Uh,
Uh, Shoot,
92,146.
it's
Okay.
very, very specific. I feel like I have to go specific now. I'm gonna go less and say like 78,732.
It's like right in between that 84,700.
Dang.
And it was funny on our watches, we hit our step goals at 4 in the morning. And I was like, oh, now everything we do for the rest of the day was just a bonus. And it was crazy to compare my steps versus Cole's steps because his stride is a little bit longer than mine. I got almost 5,000 more steps than he did just because his legs are maybe 2 inches longer than mine. So that just shows how many more foot strikes I had compared to him, which is um, probably why he always hurts a little bit less than I do after something like that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's pretty crazy though to think about that big of a difference in the steps. I mean, that is substantial. That is crazy to think about.
Yeah. Can you imagine in 100 how many more steps I would take than him?
Yeah.
My
Did you feel like, oh, sorry. I was gonna say, did you feel like you wanted to go all out the last 4 mile? Or could you even do it? Like, where, like, energy wise, were you like, we're just gonna crush this? Or did you just like, let's just get this over with, smooth sailing?
I told Cole because you have to hold him back usually in general.
Okay.
But I said let's just finish it out smooth because by that time I felt good, but I was a little bit sore, and I was just like, let's not, because if you give Cole permission to go, he'll just go. You have no choice but to go with him. So I said we'll just keep it smooth, and then the last like quarter mile or half mile we sped it up quite a bit and just brought it in pretty quick. But yeah, it was definitely hard to hold back because by then 4 miles just clips pretty quickly. There was
Yeah.
obviously some that drug on pretty long. It felt like 8 miles, but there were some loops that felt like 2 or 3 miles. So that was definitely one of them. One of the unique things is they say that you should start this challenge at like 8 o'clock in the morning or noon, but I chose midnight because why not? I thought it'd be cool. But we had to do our last leg was 8 p.m. We had to finish in the dark.
Mm.
And if we would have moved that, we could have finished like in the morning, and
Hmm.
finishing our last leg at the best time in the morning would have been just so much better. But I don't know. When you start at midnight with a challenge, it just feels like it felt really cool. But I think if I did it again, I think I would start at either 8 a.m. or noon probably.
There's something about doing a midnight run though. Like it's just, I don't know if you just feel like it feels cool, being like, oh yeah, look at me. I'm doing something, that not a lot of people are doing. But yeah, I get it.
Feels like a good feels like a good kickoff to the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna start it and it's this crazy, why not start it at midnight anyway? At that point, So I see that. I mean, I just assumed that was when it was.
Me
I just
too.
assumed that's when it was starting. It was gonna be. So that's yeah, on the same wavelength there too. But um, the whole time you guys were doing it, I was thinking, I was like, damn, we should try and get a group of us and do like a long weekend where we have basically come together the first day and start one, that night at midnight and do a whole group of us, and then at the end of it there's 4, 5, 6 of us and and then we just have a whole next day off and it's just whatever, just hanging out, whatever we want to do the next day it'd be fun to have a kind of a group set too, just to see um, the differences there too. I'm sure there would be some differences and um, some little intricacies that would change and shake up there too. But
It's funny. The last time I was talking to Trey Hunter, I was telling him when I was writing these questions down, or some of the questions I wrote anyways, it was the same weekend that Trey was in the middle of all of his, bagpipe and stuff with the St. Patrick's Day like weekend. So I'm like, thinking about like, oh, like what did you do to survive with like all the food and stuff? And I told Trey, I was like, so Trey, like, what did you do to survive during your, 2 days in the middle of St. Patrick's Day for
uh,
all the craziness sometimes that one can get up to? It just made me chuckle.
that was I love that conversation because it was I had just played I had just played or something and I was just coming back to the house and I was just dead to the world, like, and you were delivering mail and I just
Yeah.
bumped into you and you were delivering mail to the house and we were sitting there shooting the shit and when you made that comment of like, yeah, I realized all the questions I'm writing for Hunter are really gonna work for both of those. So and I just like it brought me back up. I was dead to the world. I was done for. It was my 4 a.m. Pop Tart. It was like, and Ray brought me back to life. So it was pretty good. But yeah, that was same thing. A lot of hydration, a lot of hydration. Got to eat. Got to get those. Got to get that food down. We have our set spots that like we're so used to it now. We have events that we know we eat at, and
Mm.
so there's like before we go hit all the bars in Butte, there's an event that we play that like we play there in exchange for food, and it's always huge corned beef and mashed potatoes and all of that, which is good to really prime the system before you start stacking liquids on top of there. It's usually not water. I would say it's the majority of it is going to be, I hate to say Jameson, but it's just a majority of it's going to be Jameson at that point. But it was good. It was a great year. It was busy. I don't know if you saw any pictures um, of the Butte parade, but it was like, and they were estimating like I think like 20 to 30,000 people at that parade. Maybe I mean we took the turn off Granite onto Montana, and they were like 20 deep. Like it was just insane. It was madness, and the Taco Bell Cantina looked like it was the last helicopter out of Saigon, dude. That place was freaking absolutely holding down the fort. The Taco Bell Cantina was just an absolute crapshoot. There's like, I talked to somebody that, uh, an old friend from Dickinson, Jamie Mullins, was out actually, and he said, "Yeah, we've got some friends that said they got a spot, they got a booth at the Taco Bell Cantina, and they never left. They were there, they were there for the entire day and night until it
Oh,
closed. They never left because it was just prime real estate. So it was impressive. It was impressive. So, but it was just great to see. It was great to see. It was 65 degrees and sunny. I mean, we've had years where we had a year at the parade used to start down the hill at the Silver Dollar, which was um, I don't know, to put it lightly, just shit. It was terrible. So they moved it up to the top of the hill so you don't have to go all the way up. And there was sideways snow, just dog shit, terrible. And none of us had gloves. And so your fingers just stop working when you're playing, and so you can just hear times when it's just a random note happening and you're like, yeah, somebody's hands don't work anymore. And I just remember this like vivid memory of us uh just taking we all were taking koozies and we were cutting beer koozies into gloves. We took our knives out and we were just cutting finger holes into the beer koozies. So the front of the Montana Standard, we're marching down Montana Street in sideways snow, and every guy in the band has beer koozie gloves on, and they were like standard issue in the band at that point. So it was nice to have 20,000 freaking people um, just partying like crazy, and 65 degrees and sunny, getting a sunburn, and like
yeah.
it was just really cool to see. Cool to see that, and I don't know, I didn't see anything too crazy happen. I was there the year. I remember one of the first years I was playing, um, and really stayed in Butte late when I was finally of age because I started when I was like 14 or 15, something like that. Um, yeah, because this was year 11 for me, and we were playing the one year, and the guy got completely stripped, totally naked, and got on the neon sign at the M&M and was throwing beers at the crowd on a Saturday night. Yeah, he spent the night in the drunk tank. But I also there's a guy that year that he got so drunk and disorderly and got held in the drunk tank in the morning during the day until he was sobered up enough to be released, and then got arrested again that night because he went back out and went back uptown, and then went back to the tank. So he spent two sessions in the drunk tank in the same 24-hour period, which is pretty dang impressive. So luckily
Yeah.
we didn't get into any of that. We were all on our best behavior. But yeah, it was a good. We had a strange dichotomy of events happening at the same time. I certainly wasn't running 4 miles every 4 hours during that session, so I might have taken enough breaths to justify. Like if I track that, maybe I got enough of a workout in, but definitely wasn't running at that time.
You
But
you were doing a different kind of 48-hour challenge.
yeah, it was definitely a different different kind of challenge, but it had its own unique challenges for sure. But we both made it through. We survived. We were all
Yeah. Mine was normal. And yeah, I was in the middle. We had,
right down the line.
yeah, I was working. So
You have
nothing
somebody
new.
that holds down the fort. We
Yeah,
got
I
to have
got,
somebody that holds down the fort a little bit. We can't all be completely off track, off the
yeah,
rails, running at 4 in the morning and being in Uptown Butte at 2 in the morning. Can't have that.
no.
So
Yeah, somebody's got to work where me and Trey are not working on a Friday, which is to most people a work day. But you know, it is what it is. Some people the we takes all people to make the world go round. Ray delivers the mail, and me and Trey do other things. So
yeah,
it
yeah.
evens.
I was gonna say it's keeping America moving.
That's right. Thank you, Ray. We salute you.
Ray, the only respectable man in the bunch, doesn't even there.
Yeah,
No story to tell from that weekend because he's just holding down the fort. Did anything happen on the mail route? Did anything crazy happen, or was it a pretty normal day?
probably normal. I may have yelled at a dog or two, but that's highlight of my days.
That's honestly a good thing I would say because very rarely do you get any good stories coming out of St. Patrick's Day weekend. So there's very few really good endings. So to have three for three good endings coming out of St. Patrick's Day weekend, I'd say that's definitely a win. That's a lot higher than 1.7%. So it's
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So do you kind of close it with was there one like a highlight you can think of about the I guess for both of you. You can answer too, Trey.
Go ahead, Trey.
oof.
I know it's tough putting you on the spot.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's always a ton of crazy stuff. Always a highlight for me, Maloney's in Uptown Butte. God bless. That's one of my favorite places to play because it's just a crapshoot. Always, it's just packed. Um, and this year it was so full. The security had to pull people out of the bar to make enough room for us to come in and play. Um, but that one's always a huge highlight for us because one of the guys that we play with, his daughter, I know I've talked about this in past episodes, but she bartends that night, so she always brings around a full round of Jameson for the whole band, and we all do our thing, and um, it's that thing, where you see 100 million people that you're like, oh, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, but you know, piling onto the party bus and the 15 passenger van, whatever, and just kind of having the band back together, so to speak, like literally and figuratively. It was just like that's always really just the highlight for me. It's just everybody just enjoys it so much. We don't make any money, nobody gets paid. We have the donation bucket, and all of that money for the donation bucket goes to. We have a band account, and it goes to. We've had these uniforms for 10 years, and so we ran them through the ringer for 10 years because they're not in a very forgiving environment. And um, so those, I think we just, from those 10 years and saved up and stuff, we just spent about 6,500 bucks, I think, on new uniforms, I believe, for the whole band. So we don't make any money, but we don't spend any money to be there. We don't, not to keep up the upkeep of the pipes and stuff like that. And so, it's a great system that we got. And so it's just, the highlight is kind of that broad sentiment of just being back with all those guys and gals that play. And so, yeah, it was a highlight year for sure. There's probably too many to narrow it down. So what about you, Hunter?
I'd say the biggest thing is that the 4x4x48 would have been much harder alone. Um, And I know Nick Bear talks about it. It's not his quote, but I know he talks about it a lot. You can go fast alone, but you can go further together. Um, and that's true. And that's how we talked about the solo versus the social runner. And I've
Mhm.
always tended to sway towards the social runner just because there's such a community in that and running together and being in pain together at times and experiencing the runner's high and the lows as well. So I think that was the biggest thing is the support that I had throughout it. And having somebody like Cole who you send him one text and he's like, you name a time and a place and I'll be there. You got to have those people in your life. And and having you guys with the St. Patrick's Day race with Ray this year, and I know Trey didn't make it, but he would have if he could have. So to have that support, and as well as JC on the back end sacrificing her sleep, listening to my alarm go off several times for 2 days during the night and waking the dogs up and coming back to sleep and listening to a Pop-Tart wrapper crinkle in bed. She puts up with a lot with my running, and so I definitely appreciate that. So I couldn't have done it without her, and especially that breakfast on day 2. Oh man, that might have been the best eggs and toast and sausage that I've ever had. So, yeah, just being able to do that alongside a group of people that I really, really enjoy running with, and all the people that jumped in on different legs and stuff. It was really cool to see just what you can do when you have people by your side. So that was a highlight for me, is not having to do it alone.
Good answer.
Anything else, fellas?
No, man, I was just gonna say that, yeah, all this talk of highlights, it's like this is my highlight every week. I look forward to it, and it's that thing of like runners don't have to be running to be in that community. So I think this stuff is just as important, if not more important, in a lot of ways, to just kind of build that community. And so yeah, it's at the end of talking about some pretty big stuff in the running world and some pretty big stuff in our own personal running lives and personal lives and stuff like that. It's great to be able to come back to this every week and just level out. And yeah, it's an honor, and I love it and I look forward to it. So I'd say that's a couple of pretty darn good episodes jammed into one good night, one good swoop there. So it's an honor, and I can't wait to keep rolling. I feel like we're just getting started and just picking up some momentum and really getting cruising. And so yeah, I love it. I'm excited.
Me too. So
Yeah.
I don't even know what we got coming up next, but it's gonna be good. I know that.
It's always good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We always come up with something. I'm sure we'll brainstorm after this episode, and I'm sure something amazing is going to happen in the running world that we're going to have to dive into and talk about, especially with all the ultras coming up, and the people are getting their names drawn out of the hat for big races and things like that coming up. So I'm sure we got some good content coming up. So we appreciate you guys listening. If you've made it this far into part 2 of a really long couple episodes, we appreciate you guys.
Great trooping.
Yeah. We're on YouTube and Spotify as well. So check us out. We are the Strike Twice podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.
See ya.